Welcome everybody to the Watershed Friendly Property Certification Program. My name is Kate Simmons. I'm the Science Director at Nurture Nature Center. This program was funded by the Department of Environmental Protection's 2020 Environmental Education Grants Program, and it's a collaboration between the Nurture Nature Center and Penn State Extension Master Watershed Steward Program. So we're really excited. This is the launch of this program, this website, and we're really just excited that you guys are interested and here to learn about making your property watershed friendly, or maybe it already is. So just really briefly, a little bit about Nurture Nature Center. If you are not familiar, we are located in downtown Easton, and we have a combination of science, art, and community dialogue that we like to use in all of our programming and approaches. So this picture is showing the Science on a Sphere when we are able to be open to the public. This is some of the programming that we do. We also have really great arts programming and an urban garden in the back of our building. And one of the things we like to do is, our mission really is to create a place where people can learn about local environmental issues. And one of those is watershed science and being able to contribute positively to the watershed health. So we are really excited about collaborating with Penn State Extension and the Master Watershed Steward program on this project. I'm going to introduce Erin Frederick to talk about that program.
All right, thanks, Kate, and hi, everyone. I am the statewide coordinator for the Master Watershed Steward program at Penn State Extension, and I'll give you just a very quick overview of our program. One of our primary goals is to educate and empower volunteers to protect the environment. We provide 40 hours of training and a variety of natural resource topics to anyone that wants to learn more and has a desire to volunteer in their community. Our training then gives the stewards the knowledge and the confidence they need to get involved in conservation efforts locally. We have a very strong focus on partnerships. We really feel that if we all work together, we can accomplish so much more. So our county coordinators throughout the state are actively connecting with local organizations, and they relay these volunteer opportunities to the watershed stewards. Our program also focuses on education and on-the-ground restoration projects. So our stewards have done so much wonderful work across the state, such as assisting with stream restoration projects, habitat creation, water quality sampling, organizing rainbow workshops, giving presentations, writing articles, all this stuff to really truly make a difference. Our program is now offered in 20 counties across the state, and we have over 500 active volunteers. Since we started in 2013, our Master Watershed Stewards have contributed over 50,000 volunteer hours, which is just amazing. We have a really incredible network of volunteers, and certainly if you'd like to get involved with what we're doing, you can check out our website. It's listed there on the screen, and we'll put it in the chat pod. We will be offering a virtual training this spring in all of our active counties, which are in blue on the map there. And before I wrap up, I'd really like to thank our amazing team of Master Watershed Stewards that helped pull this certification project together. This was, a 2-year effort in the making, and Nurture Nature's assistance in getting this going. So. And also major kudos to Master Watershed Steward Julia Lucas for presenting today. So with that, I will let Julia have the floor.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Lucas. I am a Master Watershed Steward for the Lehigh Valley area in Northampton specifically. And I just wanted to highlight to everyone, like we all know, we all need clean water to live. And in Pennsylvania, we are lucky that we have a lot of abundant water sources. We are apparently we have the second largest number of stream miles in the United States. So if you think about how big some of the other states are, that's pretty impressive. We have a huge number of stream miles, huge amount of acres of public lakes, over 300,000 acres of wetlands. And we use over 1 billion gallons a day of groundwater in our state. But we have a challenge in this state as well. So of that 85,000 miles of streams, over 18,000 miles of those streams are impaired. And impaired means that they have been damaged, so they were unable to support aquatic life or to be used for recreation, fishing, swimming, or any other purposes. So it's actually unsuitable to be used for those purposes. So it's an unfortunate amount of red we still have all over our state. So this program is part of how we can all contribute to this. So in just as small drops become an ocean, if we all contribute to protecting and improving Pennsylvania's freshwater and streams, we can make a big impact and reduce that 18,000 miles of impaired streams and improve them over time. Can we go to the next slide? So to start with some basics, let's talk about what is a watershed, since we're talking about watershed-friendly properties. So a watershed is that area that channels the rainfall and snow melt into streams, creeks, and rivers, and eventually outflows into larger and larger bodies of water. So we all live in a watershed. It includes both the surface water, that obvious water that we see everywhere, and is at high risk of picking up and carrying pollutants. But it also includes the groundwater aquifers, and also the groundwater that filters through the ground and actually seeps into the streams and provides the water to the streams on a regular basis when we don't have rain. So it's partially because of the groundwater that rivers and streams don't run dry when we haven't had rain in a while. So as I mentioned, we all live in a watershed, and most of the attendees, I believe today, many of these are on the East Coast, but there might be some of East Coast, if you want to call it a coast, of Pennsylvania, which is the Delaware. But as you can see, we have a number of really large watersheds throughout the state. So you can find out where your county is and understand where all of your water and streams flow down. So I'm in Northampton County, and live off of the Monocacy Creek, and we all feed down into the Delaware River. So the question is, why should you certify your property as watershed friendly? I mean, part of that is if you're even joining us today, you have a commitment to improving and contributing to the improvement of PA's freshwater resources or the protection of them. So it's one way to share that commitment. You'll be hearing about the certification signs and certification certificates later. So it'll be one way to show publicly how you support this effort. Through that, you'll also be encouraging your neighbors, hopefully, to do the same. You can have some bragging rights. Tell them, hey, I got my property certified. How about you do it the same? We really want to support that broad adoption of best practices. And I think as you get into some of the details of the application, these things are not hard to do. These are very easy to do in most cases. It'll help protect your local streams and rivers and all the life that depends on that, and also contribute to that improvement of those impaired water resources. And then also we have a focus on providing habitat for birds, fish, and other wildlife. So there's a lot of good here you can do by certifying your property. So I'm going to turn it back over to Catherine to give you an overview of the application, including where to find it, what you need to complete it, and then I'll come back and give you some highlights on some of the 4 sections of the application and some of the things that you can be doing to achieve a certified property. Catherine?
Thank you so much, Julia. There are several sections as part of the application. First, we want to talk about where to find it. All right, so this is our main web page. And if you go to the local programs tab at the top, it will take you to all of our programs, but the one that you're looking for is right here in the center. You can see the watershed friendly certified property logo that Carrie Maxfield did. She did a great job. And you can click there and it'll take you right to the certification page. And so there's a link up here that says tell a friend. If you want to refer a friend to fill out their own application, that'll send an email to them with the link. We have a little bit of description about what Julia went over related to watersheds and why you should certify your property. And then we get down to here where you can start the application. And what we would recommend is that you get a printable worksheet of the application, which you can get by clicking here. And it will bring up a PDF that has all of the questions, so you can go through and get all the answers to them before you actually sit down and start the application process. There's also a little bit of information about the sign itself that you can display on your property if you qualify. And also, if you qualify, you will get a certificate from Penn State Extension that verifies that your property is watershed friendly. So the application that you would start is actually here. And what you would do is just go through. There are 5 pages that you need to fill out. They ask questions about your address, what type of property you want to certify. There's a range of different properties you can certify. If you have a small, yard, private residence, you can. If you have a farm, if it's a shared property or a business, you want to put in an estimate of the size of your property. And then there's a couple of questions related to if you have livestock, is there a pond on there? You also want to find out what watershed your property is located in. And if you're in Lehigh Valley, it's most likely that you are in the Delaware for the major watershed. And then there's some links here. If you don't know your large watershed, there's this website at the EPA that you can click and go to, and it will help you find out that information. And so then the next couple of pages, this page 2, 3, 4, and 5, go through those first things that we showed, this reducing stormwater runoff, reducing pollution, conserving water, and supporting wildlife and pollinators. So there are all questions specific to those 4 categories on each of those pages. And then at the end, you will get a page that will show you if you qualify or not. And there's a bunch of resources linked on the right side of the website that will help you improve, and you're welcome to take the application again if you did not qualify. And there's also a link to email someone at the Master Watershed to help you out if you're having problems either accessing the application or you're not sure of how to answer something. So again, here, to complete the application, you need to know your major watershed, the large watershed, the size of your property, and then just details about how you manage the property. Are you using pesticides, herbicides? Do you have native plants? That type of question. So we're going to go into a little bit of detail about each of those 4 components that help with making your property watershed friendly. And for that, I'm going to turn it back over to Julia.
Thanks, Catherine. So the first topic that we address in the application is reducing stormwater runoff. And I'm sure you probably have heard about this. It's part of the reason why we are seeing more flooding these days, because when we get rain, we have more developed land. And as you see in these diagrams, when we have natural ground cover, we actually have only a 10% runoff because most of it's evaporating or being used by the plants and then evaporating, or it's going into the ground, either through shallow or deep infiltration. But when we start putting our houses, our driveways, or sidewalks, it starts changing that balance, and we end up with up to 55% of runoff, and it can be surfaces. You can really, really seriously reduce that infiltration into the ground. So stormwater runoff really is our biggest source of water pollution in Pennsylvania. So we could go to the next slide. So some of the things we want you to consider as you are preparing your facility, not your facility, I'm sorry, that's what I talk about at work all the time, your property, is how can you slow the flow of water from your property? And there's some great resources that are linked to the application on the resource side of the application that'll give you a lot more information about these things. So the first one is obvious. Can you have pervious surfaces. So that's everything from grass to having these examples of pervious paving, where it allows the water to actually slowly seep into the ground instead of running over the top of it. Some other examples are rain gardens. That's a little bit, requires a little bit of building, but it can also be very beautiful. Rain barrels are a hugely popular and very easy system. The Watershed Stewards are often leading rain barrel building workshops. So if you're interested in that and you want a rain barrel, keep your eye out for those. Where you want to have a rain barrel is where you're capturing the water during a storm and then using it or letting it flow out later when the storm has completed, and allowing it to infiltrate into the ground slower. So instead of just having it run over the surface of the lawn or over the pervious surfaces, that you're giving it more time to then do some of that evaporation and transpiration and infiltration at a later time. Other pieces are definitely around planting things. So trees are fantastic for providing that infiltration into the ground, like by the roots break up the soil so that it provides roots for the water to flow in. Native plants, also same thing, roots as well as the use themselves. Vegetated swales are another good place. I have a number of vegetated swales on my property because there's just too much water coming down the hill at us. So we have grass planted swales. And then if you have water or you live near a water body like a pond or a stream or a river, you want to have riparian buffers where, again, those trees and plantings help create a barrier that slows that flow of the storm water directly into the river or stream. So even as you saw in those original slides, even if we had a perfect natural environment, we would still have 10% of runoff. And so since we don't have perfect natural environments around us, we're still going to have some level of runoff. So there's always going to be some runoff. So then we want to not only slow the flow, but then what does run off of the properties, we want to make sure it's clean or as clean as possible. So as you see in this, just a reminder that pesticides and any pollution that we have on our properties become part of that water cycle if we don't keep them out. Through that runoff directly into the streams or rivers, and also through, sometimes if it's heavy enough, it can get into the soil and then get into the groundwater as well. So think about what's in your runoff. And I'm going to focus mostly on the left side where we're talking about residential runoff. We have oil and gas from leaks on the car, changing your oil, letting it run off down the driveway. Same thing with antifreeze. Fertilizers, if you're using a lot of fertilizers or pesticides and letting those get onto, either using them in too heavy a levels or getting onto impervious surfaces, then they can wash off. So when you can do some things to reduce the risk of having polluted runoff, some of them include minimizing or limiting the use of pesticides and herbicides, and same with fertilizers and amendments, using them carefully, making sure that you are paying attention to the conditions that are required for applying them when you do need to use them. It's not appropriate to be applying most of these things right before a rainstorm. It's not going to do what you want it to, and it's all going to run off into the stream. Another one is around collecting mulch or grass clippings and picking up other trash so it can't get into our storm drains, which most of them do go directly out into a stream or creek or a river directly with no filtration. These things, the storm drains do not go through any treatment. They're just a direct flow. So we want to keep that out. And then definitely, it's the look of the poor dog who's like, why are you bothering me? Make sure you're disposing of animal waste. This also is a pollutant if it gets directly into the watershed, rather the streams or lakes. And it also includes animal waste if you've got, like I have pet chickens at home, so we need to make sure that we're taking care of that appropriately. Part of the point of our next thing is about conserving water and making sure that we're treating the water as precious commodity. The globe here shows you that how much, if you take all of the water in the world, it's that big marble, and the fresh water is the smaller marble, and the really tiny one is what's in our lakes and rivers. So we really do need to pay attention to the fact that there's a limited supply of water in our world, and it's all recycling around again and again. And as I pointed out earlier in the presentation, that we're in Pennsylvania, we use over 1 billion gallons of groundwater every day, and that 50% of Pennsylvanians actually rely on groundwater, but that means the other 50% are actually relying on surface water. So we want to make sure that both the groundwater and the surface water is both clean and that we're not wasting it, because it is really that precious commodity. So some of the things we can do, particularly saving water in the garden, this is one of the easiest things to do, is if you have a rain barrel, use that water in the rain barrel to water your plants. I'm a big vegetable gardener, so this is one of the herb gardens I have in my backyard, and we use the rain barrels to water the herb gardens and to water our potted plants and things like that. That also helps with that slowed flow from the stormwater. So all these things add up. If you do need to use water for a garden, you'd want to use a drip hose, use mulch. So the drip hose allows the water to be put exactly where it needs and is not evaporating into the air. It's at the roots of the plant. And the mulch is then also helping keep that water in. Using a water timer to go with that drip hose is a great idea as well, because then you know you're not like leaving it running for ages. And only water when there is insufficient rainfall. And then lastly, also consider planting natives that really don't need watering. And when we plant natives, it's one of those elements that's supporting wildlife. As we go to the next slide, and we include the water supporting wildlife because really we're multiplying the good. The things that help wildlife also support the watershed and vice versa. So as I say, you can help the watershed by protecting the wildlife as well. If you plant native plants, as I said before, they need less watering, but they also provide food and shelter for wildlife. Providing shade over ponds and streams, like we had the picture earlier of the riparian buffer along the river, that helps inhibit algae overgrowth and protects the other inhabitants. And you know, there's a lot of folks out there who like to go fishing. Trout are one of those animals that are protected by having appropriately shaded waterways. If you allow for natural composting, that also improves the soil structure, as well as supporting the wildlife, the insects and the animals that actually eat the compost to help it break down. And it allows for more water infiltration when that soil structure is improved. And we want you to try to remove or control invasive species because they crowd out our native species otherwise. And then also providing some shelter for the animals and the wildlife, the insects, et cetera, through brush piles, et cetera, to help keep that wildlife in balance. So I'm actually going to turn this back over to Catherine to take you through the certification process.
So if you have employed some of those best management practices that Julia just covered, odds are that you will qualify for certification. And so an 85% qualifies you for certification. You'll find out immediately after you submit the application if you meet that or not. And then a certificate will be emailed to you, and you get an opportunity to get a sign. Now, as part of the grant that spurred this, the development of this website application, we are able to fund the first 250 Watershed signs. After those first 250 signs are out, there will be a very small fee for getting a watershed sign for your property. It's similar to the Gardner certification. And this is the page that you will see if you received a passing score. It gives you details on everything I just said. And if you get to this page, you can get that free sign by putting in your name and address, and we will email that to you. If you're in the Easton area close to Nurture Nature Center, we're also going to set up some times for people to stop by and get it. So what does this sign look like? You can see in mock-up that Carrie has there. There are details about the sign, including the dimensions. It's about 25 inches long, And then we have this plaque here. Now, what's really cool is that this stake is used to hold the sign because it's a magnet. So we have this printed on a magnet. It's designed to just easily stick to it. And it also, everything is there that you need. It comes with screws to attach, and it should all work well. If you have questions, there's definitely more information on the website about that. And we can also take some questions now. So this is really time for you to either raise your hand or ask a question in the chat, and get any questions that you have about the program answered. We have a whole bunch of Master Watershed Stewards available to help answer. Tracy asks, does getting certified limit you from doing anything to your property?
So this is Julie. I can answer that. I would say no, it does not limit you as long as you are maintaining the good practices that are addressed in the application process. So it's not intended to be something where you become totally static, and it is intended to be flexible, the certification process of everyone from someone who lives in a very small property to, as you said, very large properties. So everyone can contribute. So this isn't something where you're locked in forever, that you can't ever do anything again to your property.
So George is asking if this program is just for Pennsylvania residents. And I think that the answer at this time is yes. This is a Penn State extension project where we're really focusing on Pennsylvania. I don't know if there are any plans for collaborating with other states at this time.
Katie, there are programs in other states already established. We did some research. I know New Jersey has one, I believe Delaware. So there are other programs in other states available. So they could probably just contact their extension office.
Great, thank you for that clarification. They're not this specific program, but they're similar in terms of promoting watershed. All right, Terrence asks, are we collaborating with local communities and cities? And if so, how? At the present moment, we were really focusing on getting the application together and the program together and launch for this date. And we will be promoting through our social media and through outreach. A large part of that promotion and education is going to be done by the Master Watershed Stewards, who put in a lot of volunteer hours, like Aaron mentioned at the very beginning. That was really awesome to see how hard they work. So they'll be helping us collaborate and work within the different communities where they have established partnerships. And we, of course, Nurture Nature Center in Easton will be collaborating with local community organizations about this. Judy asks, are there any statistics on how clean the Lehigh River is? I am going to, I know that there is for the Delaware and the Lehigh. I do not know what they are specifically, and I'm going to look to maybe Carrie, since she is involved with the Watershed Coalition, if she knows of any resources that would give that specifically.
I believe that the Lehigh River is considered impaired for some instances, largely because of sediment load. But I think that there have been numerous studies about the quality, and I know that there's ongoing studies about the water quality currently in the Lehigh. If you want more information, I would suggest that you contact the folks from the Watershed Coalition of Lehigh Valley.
Great, and I know I saw that Rebecca was on an attendee. So Rebecca, if you want to speak to this too, you're welcome, but you don't have to.
So the Lehigh River is very long and different portions of it are impaired for different things. I didn't hear the question about whether there was a specific reach of the Lehigh or just the Lehigh in general.
It was Judy. She was just asking if there were statistics on the Lehigh and its water quality. Judy, I don't know if you can put in the chat if you had any specifics about that, or if you want to unmute yourself and provide any more context.
So if anybody, if she seems to having trouble unmuting, if anybody wants any particular information about water quality, actually anywhere, the information is actually all fairly easily accessible on a website. And so the easiest thing for anybody to do who's on this webinar who wants more information would be to send an email to me. You can actually just use my personal email address because it's easier. It's waterflowsdownhill@gmail.com. And I can connect anybody with how to find that information out themselves, or if they just want me to find it out, I can do that. So it's Rebecca Kennedy, and my email address is waterflowsdownhill@gmail.com. But the information is all located on a database that's maintained online by the DEP called EMAP-PA, which looks really daunting when you first open it up, but finding that particular information is actually fairly simple. So if anyone's interested, just get in touch with me and I will walk you through how to do it, or just get you the information so you don't have to be bothered.
A few other questions have come in. One is pond restoration considered a good watershed practice? Julia, do you want to take that one?
It depends on how well it's being done. So it can be, but you need to make sure that you're not making it worse by undermining the natural water flow, the underlying natural water flow. So there is a lot of effort in Pennsylvania and the East Coast, Eastern Pennsylvania, particularly to remove some old dams, and that may actually remove some old ponds. And there we need to make sure that the sediment is removed so that it's not just washing downstream, et cetera. So it's not something to be taken lightly. Does anyone else have any comments on that?
I would just say, it really depends on the size of the pond and what you're doing. And at Penn State Extension, we have a lot of resources on pond management, and I can put the link for that in the chat.
Thank you, Erin. That'd be great. Terrence asks, the Lehigh Valley cities are experiencing a lot of development. Has there been any impact studies or expectation of determining the short and long-term impact on stormwater runoff, especially as it's affecting the Lehigh and Delaware rivers and Bushkill Creek? So the first thing that comes to mind for me is the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, which has a lot of reports about development in the Lehigh Valley and projections for the future. I don't know that they have studies specifically about stormwater runoff. So I welcome anyone else, any other partners who might know more details about that. Or if the Watershed Coalition knows of any.
Yeah, I'll chime in here again. There are extensive studies that are carried out actually on a fairly periodic and regular basis by the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, and then the impacts of stormwater studies that are being carried out by the DEP. Specifically on the Bushkill, there's actually a fair amount of additional work that's been done because the group there is pretty active. Again, if somebody wants more specific information, then just that person can just get in touch with me and I can connect them with people who would answer their specific question. I'm having what's the word? Not the microphone, the speaker on this computer is a little distorted, so I was having a little trouble hearing the specific question. But if somebody wants to just email me, I will connect them with people who have the answers. But the answer to that question is yes, it's been studied to within an inch of its life.
Great, thank you. And I'm also putting in a link to mywaterway.epa.gov that Mike Bulk shared, which provides some of that water quality information. So Cindy asks that she's working to improve things at her local park, and she wondered if a community park can apply.
Right, this is Erin. Yes, parks can apply. It's not just residential properties. We have it open.
Yeah, I think in the pull down, we have municipal properties as well, schools, etc. So I agree. I was sitting there trying to run through the pull down menu.
Judy asks, has a study been done on the amount of water being taken by companies like Nestle, Niagara, Ocean Spray, and the brewery in Fogelsville, lowering the water table? I think that's another one for Rebecca. Rebecca, I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
So also, the Delaware River Basin Commission is required to study and approve all significant groundwater withdrawals. So the DRBC actually carries out studies for any significant groundwater withdrawal. The trick there is that some of the extractions for water users like Nestle are actually not considered groundwater. So Nestle will extract water from what's considered a spring, which is a surface water source. So there's some gray areas there. The Bushkill has its whole own set of issues with dewatering that's really being played out kind of more publicly in Northampton County. So if anybody's interested in that, there's a number of politicians up there and other folks. And the person to contact for that would be either John Mauser of the Martins Jacoby Watershed Association. He's kind of taking a lead role at connecting with that, or Nate Pritchard at the Northampton County Conservation District. And those are the 2 point people who from the Watershed Coalition who are working on that issue.
All right. Are there any other questions?
I'm just excited already that we're crashing the site, it sounds like. That's terrific. If you can't get it now, keep trying. Hold on to that enthusiasm.
Yeah, we're really excited about this program, and we're glad that there's the amount of interest that there is. So a link to this recorded presentation will be available on the website under the resources page as well. And we will have a handout that's also available that talks about the program in general. If you are a Master Watershed Steward and you want to share this program with others, or even if you just want to share it with your neighbors or family or friends, that will also be available on the website.
This is Jody. I just wanted to thank Nurture Nature Center for partnering with us and all the watershed stewards who put a lot of hours into this project. It's exciting to see it launch, and spread the word to your friends.
All right, everybody, I hope you have a good evening. Please try the application, even if you weren't able to get through the first time. And we look forward to seeing more of our watershed friendly signs everywhere.